So the verse I want to share with you guys is from Galatians chapter 5. It's actually 2 verses, and it reads, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. The law is not against such things." So a couple things that stand out. First off, we see that this is a comparison to fruit. Paul says that the fruit of the Spirit. Now, if you look at the Greek word, you don't have to be a Greek scholar, but what stands out is that is a word, karpos, and it is a singular word. So it is singular. What that means is that this is one type of fruit. And so the comparison I like to use is apple trees produce apples. And so if you have an apple tree, it equals apples. There may be multiple apples on the tree, but there's only one type of fruit. Apple trees produce apples. And so what Paul says is the fruit of the Spirit, singular, is love, joy, and he goes into this list. And so apples come from apple trees. That is the source. What Paul says is the fruit of the Spirit. So the source of these things is the Spirit. That is the Holy Spirit. So the Holy Spirit produces, like an apple tree, these characteristics. And those are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And so what I love about this verse is that it shows us that much like a fruit tree produces things by nature, the Holy Spirit in us produces things that look like a certain characteristic. So if apple trees produce apples, what Paul says is the Holy Spirit in us produces what? Well, it produces these characteristics from this list that look like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. But maybe my favorite part of this entire verse is that last part. And it says, the law is not against such things, not against such things. Now, when I first began to read this verse and understand it, the question was, that seems like an odd thing to tag at the end. Paul, why would you say the law is not against such things? Well, let's think about it for just a moment. When Paul says the law, he's thinking about the Old Testament law, predominantly the 10 Commandments that many of us know. And what we know about the law is that the law equals limits. The law limits things. And so what we read in the 10 Commandments is that you should not murder. And so the law, there's a limit to murder. There's a limit to that action. The law says that we should not lie. And so there's a limit there. The law says that we should not steal. And so the law limits. Why does the law limit? Well, that's because there's something inside of us that would produce things that can lead to murder, that can produce things that look like lying, that can produce things that look like stealing. And we call that sin. Sin lives in us and produces things, desires in us that can lead to certain actions. And so God gave us the law to limit those actions produced by those desires. Now in Galatians chapter 5, what Paul says is that the law is not against such things. Against what things? The law is not against the things that the Holy Spirit produces in us. And so Paul's point is that when we come to faith in Jesus, the Spirit lives in us and he produces new desires within us. And those new desires do not need limits because the actions produced by those new desires are love, and you cannot love enough. It looks like joy. You cannot have enough or too much joy, peace, patience. And so what I love about this verse is that it's a well-known verse titled The Fruit of the Spirit, but Paul's point is this: when we come to faith in Jesus, the Holy Spirit lives in us. Because the Holy Spirit lives in us, he produces these things inside of us. And the things that the Spirit produces in us look like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And we don't have to worry about keeping the commandments because the Holy Spirit produces in us things that do not require limits. And so I hope this has been helpful for you. It's one of my favorite verses because it points to this is who we are in Jesus. And I pray that this has been an encouragement to you.